My husband didn't know I spoke French. I stood in the gleaming lobby of the luxury apartment building, my reflection caught in the polished marble floor, and watched Michelle Beaumont, the property owner, shake Ethan's hand with enthusiastic warmth. Ethan's French flowed smoothly, confidently, each syllable sharp and practiced. He'd studied in Paris for 2 years during college, a fact he mentioned at every dinner party. I smiled politely, playing my part. The quiet American wife who nodded along, waiting for translations. Bienvenue, bienvenue, Michelle gestured toward the elevator. The penthouse has the most magnificent view of the bay. You will love it. Ethan glanced back at me. He's welcoming us, says the view is nice. I nodded, keeping my expression blank. The truth was, I'd been learning French in secret for 8 months. Every night after Ethan fell asleep, I'd slip my earbuds in and whisper along with lessons, my phone screen glowing under the blankets. Duolingo, podcasts, French films with subtitles I gradually turned off. It started as curiosity, something just for me in a life that felt increasingly small. But now, riding this elevator up to the 20th floor, I realized it was about to become something else entirely. The doors opened to reveal floor-to-ceiling windows framing the San Francisco skyline. Afternoon light poured across hardwood floors so polished they looked like glass. Magnifique, non? Michelle swept his arm wide. Beautiful, I whispered. Ethan didn't hear me. He was already walking through the space with Michelle, their voices echoing off the high ceilings. I followed slowly, my heels clicking against the floor, watching them move from room to room. The master suite is through here, Michelle said in French. And this room, perhaps for children one day? Ethan laughed, responding in rapid French. No children. My wife and I agreed on that years ago. Well, I decided. She went along with it. My chest tightened. Michelle's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly, professional mask back in place. I see. Well, the space is versatile. An office, perhaps? They moved on. I stood in the doorway of that empty room, staring at cream-colored walls that should have held a crib, toys, finger paintings. 5 years ago, I'd wanted children. I'd tried to bring it up over dinner one night, carefully, gently, the way I'd learned to approach any topic that might upset him. Don't be ridiculous, Claire, he'd said, not even looking up from his phone. Kids are expensive, exhausting. You can barely manage the apartment we have now. I'd opened my mouth to protest, to say that I could manage, that I wanted to try. But his eyes had finally lifted to meet mine. Cold, dismissive. The conversation was over before it began. I never brought it up again. Claire? Ethan's voice called from deeper in the apartment. Come see the kitchen. I walked through the massive living room, past the dining area that could seat 12, into a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. Marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, a window above the sink that overlooked the bay. You like it? Ethan asked in English, barely glancing at me. It's beautiful. Good. He turned back to Michelle, switching to French. Now, about the paperwork. The price is acceptable, but I want to discuss the deed. Michelle nodded. Of course, you mentioned you'd both be on the title. My pulse quickened. Ethan's voice dropped slightly, more casual. Actually, I've been thinking it might be simpler to put it in my name only, at least initially, for tax purposes. Michelle said slowly. That is possible, yes, though typically married couples in California prefer joint tenancy. I handle all our finances, Ethan continued, his tone easy, practiced. My wife doesn't really understand these things. She works, but how do I say this? It's a small job. Administrative work. She wouldn't know the difference anyway. The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the marble counter, my knuckles white. Michael's eyes flicked toward me, a flash of concern crossing his face before he looked away. I see, Michelle said carefully. Well, if that is what you both agree to, she agrees to whatever I decide. Ethan laughed, that particular laugh he used when he felt clever. Trust me, this is easier for everyone. She doesn't need to be bothered with complicated financial matters. My hands had gone numb. Cold spread through my chest, down my arms, into my fingers. 8 months of secret lessons, of whispered vocabulary words, of believing I was learning a language for myself, and instead, I'd learned the truth about my marriage. Perhaps, Michelle said, his voice gentler now, you should discuss this with your wife directly, in English, so she understands clearly. Ethan waved his hand dismissively. I'll handle it. Shall we look at the master bathroom? They walked away. I stayed frozen at that counter, staring at my reflection in the polished marble. A woman I barely recognized stared back. Pale, thin, smaller somehow than I remembered being. When had I become this person? The memory came without permission, vivid and sharp. 6 years ago, our first date. Ethan had taken me to an expensive Italian restaurant in North Beach, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters in pressed black suits. He'd ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted, his voice confident as he spoke to the waiter in flawless Italian. I hope you like seafood, he'd said after the waiter left. The branzino here is exceptional. I'd never tried branzino. I'd been about to order the pasta primavera, simple and safe. But I'd smiled and said, sounds wonderful. You'll love it. I have excellent taste. He'd leaned back in his chair, studying me with those sharp blue eyes. You seem quiet, shy. I like that in a woman. At the time, I'd felt flattered, chosen. He was handsome, successful, confident, a senior architect at a prestigious firm. And I was just a receptionist at a dental office, barely scraping by in a studio apartment in the Sunset District. Thank you, I'd said softly. You don't talk much, do you? I'm just nervous. First date jitters. He'd smiled. Don't worry, I'll do the talking. I'm very good at it. He had been. He'd talked through the entire dinner about his projects, his travels, his time in Paris, his plans to buy property in the city. I'd listened, nodding, asking occasional questions, and when the fish arrived, perfectly cooked and utterly bland, I'd eaten every bite and said it was delicious. Looking back now, I could see it so clearly. That first date had set the pattern for everything that followed. He talked, I listened. He decided, I agreed. And I'd mistaken it for love. 3 months into dating, he'd brought me to meet his parents. The Thornton family home in Pacific Heights was a 3-story Victorian with bay windows and a manicured garden that probably cost more to maintain than I made in a year. His mother, Diane, had opened the door wearing pearls and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So, you're Claire. Her gaze had traveled from my drugstore shoes to my department store dress to my nervous smile. How nice. His father, Robert, had been colder. He'd shaken my hand limply, barely making eye contact, before returning to his leather armchair and his whiskey. Dinner had been excruciating. So, Claire, Diane had said, delicately cutting her roasted duck, Ethan tells us you work as a receptionist? Yes, ma'am. At a dental practice in... How quaint. She'd smiled. I suppose someone has to answer phones. Ethan had laughed. Mom, don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel, darling. I'm being realistic. She'd turned those cold eyes back to me. You didn't attend college, I understand. My cheeks had burned. No, ma'am. I couldn't afford... Of course. She'd patted her lips with her napkin. Well, education isn't for everyone. Some people are better suited to more practical work. Robert had grunted in agreement, not bothering to look up. Ethan had reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. I'd thought it was support, solidarity. Now I understood it differently. It was a claim, a signal to his parents. She's mine, and I've chosen her despite her flaws. After dinner, Diane had taken me to the kitchen. Let me show you where everything is, she'd said briskly, since you'll be helping with cleanup. I'd blinked. Oh, I thought, what? That you'd sit with the men while the work gets done? She'd laughed, sharp and brittle. No, dear, you'll learn quickly that in this family, women who don't contribute intellectually contribute practically. Come along. I'd wash dishes for 2 hours while Diane supervised, commenting on how I held the sponge wrong, scrubbed the pots incorrectly, arranged the glasses in the wrong order. Through the doorway, I could hear Ethan and his father discussing architecture, their voices low and comfortable. He never once came to check on me. When we'd finally left, climbing into his BMW in the dark driveway, I'd been exhausted. Your mother is very particular, I'd said carefully. She means well. She just wants to make sure you understand what's expected. He'd started the engine. If we're going to get married someday, you'll need to know how to handle family dinners properly. I'd turned to look at him. Married? Eventually, if you work out. He'd smiled, reaching over to tuck my hair behind my ear. You will, though. You're perfect. You don't argue. You don't complain. You just do what you're told. He'd meant it as a compliment. I'd taken it as one. The engagement had come 6 months later. He'd proposed at the same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. The ring already sized, the speech already prepared. I hadn't even finished saying yes before he was calling his parents to share the news. The wedding planning had been a nightmare, dressed up as a dream. Diane had taken control immediately. The venue, the flowers, the menu, the guest list, all decided without my input. When I'd suggested inviting my aunt from Seattle, my only remaining family, Diane had wrinkled her nose. But she's a hairdresser, isn't she? Darling, we can't have her mixing with Robert's business associates. They might think we're, well, common. Ethan had nodded along. Mom's right. Let's keep it intimate, mostly our side. Our wedding had 200 guests. I'd known fewer than 10 of them. The ceremony itself was beautiful in that impersonal, magazine-perfect way. I'd walk down the aisle in a dress Diane had chosen, carrying flowers Diane had selected, toward a man who smiled at me like I was a prize he'd won at auction. We'd honeymooned in Nice because Ethan wanted to practice his French. I'd wanted to go to Hawaii, somewhere warm and relaxing. But he'd laughed at the suggestion. Hawaii? That's so touristy. We're going to the French Riviera. You'll love it. I hadn't loved it. I'd spent a week watching him charm waiters and shopkeepers and hotel staff in French while I stood silently beside him, smiling, nodding, understanding nothing. He'd told me where to go, what to order, what to wear. I'd been a prop in his European adventure. On our 3rd anniversary, he'd forgotten completely. I'd woken up early, made his favorite breakfast, set the table with flowers and the good dishes. When he'd come out of the bedroom, already dressed for work, he'd grabbed a piece of toast and kept walking. Ethan? What? I'm running late. It's our anniversary. He'd paused, hand on the doorknob, and turned back with genuine confusion. Is it? 3 years today. Right, yeah. Sorry, babe. I've got a huge presentation. We'll celebrate this weekend, okay? He'd kissed my forehead absently and left. That weekend never came. By Friday, he'd forgotten again. By the following week, I'd stopped mentioning it. On my 30th birthday last year, he'd been home, but barely present. I'd come back from work. I was an administrative assistant at a real estate office by then, slightly better pay, and found him on the couch with his laptop. Hey, I'd said. I was thinking we could go out for dinner, maybe that Thai place I like. Can't. Deadline. He hadn't looked up. It's my birthday. Shit, right. He'd glanced at me briefly. Sorry, Claire, this project is huge. I'll make it up to you. I'd ordered takeout and eaten alone at the kitchen table while he worked. At midnight, I'd cut myself a slice of grocery store cake and sung happy birthday in my head. He never made it up to me. 2 months ago, I'd bought myself a cashmere scarf. It was beautiful. Soft gray, warm, the nicest thing I'd owned in years. I'd saved for 3 months to afford it. When Ethan had seen the shopping bag, his face had darkened. How much did you spend? It was on sale. How much, Claire? $120. He'd actually shouted. Are you insane? Do you have any idea how reckless that is? We're trying to save for a house and you're blowing money on accessories? You bought a $700 watch last month. His eyes had gone cold. I earn my money. I can spend it how I want. You contribute barely anything to this household. Every dollar you waste is a dollar I earned. I'd returned the scarf the next day. Back in the penthouse, I heard Ethan and Michelle's footsteps returning. I straightened, composing my face into the pleasant, neutral expression I'd perfected over 5 years of marriage. The bathroom is incredible, Ethan said in English, clearly for my benefit. 6-jet shower, heated floors. You'll love it. I met his eyes. Will I? Something in my tone made him pause. Of course. Why wouldn't you? Michelle was watching us carefully, his expression unreadable. No reason, I said softly. Then, switching to French, I added, "The apartment is beautiful, Monsieur Beaumont. I appreciate you taking the time to show it to us." Ethan's face went white. Michel's eyebrows rose, but his voice remained warm. "Your French is excellent, madame. I'm glad you like it." "Since when?" Ethan started. I turned to him, still speaking French. "Since before we met, actually. My mother was from Lyon. She died when I was 12, but she taught me first. I just never mentioned it." The lie came easily. "Necessary. You—" His voice cracked. "You understood everything?" "Every word." I looked at Michel. "Thank you for your kindness, monsieur, but we won't be purchasing this property. My husband and I need to have a serious discussion about our finances and our future." Michel nodded slowly. "I understand. Madame, if I may, my sister went through something similar. She is much happier now. I wish you strength." "Thank you." Ethan grabbed my arm. "Claire, what the hell?" I pulled away from him, the first time I'd ever done so. "Don't touch me." "We need to talk about this." "Yes, we do, but not here." I walked to the door, my legs surprisingly steady. Behind me, I heard Ethan apologizing to Michelle in French, making excuses, his voice tight with humiliation and rage. I didn't wait for him. I took the elevator down alone, walked out into the bright afternoon, and stood on the sidewalk breathing in the salt air from the bay. My phone buzzed. "Ethan, where did you go? Get back here." I turned it off. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't care what he wanted. The next few days were brutal. Ethan refused to speak to me except in angry bursts. "You lied about speaking French. You humiliated me in front of that man. You're being childish and dramatic." I let him shout. I didn't engage. I was too busy making plans. I met with a divorce lawyer on my lunch break. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she had kind eyes and a firm handshake. "California is a community property state," she explained. "You're entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. The condo you currently own together, savings, retirement accounts, all of it. He says he's the one who earned everything. Doesn't matter. In the eyes of the law, your contributions to the household, financial or otherwise, are equal. You're entitled to your half." For the first time in months, I cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. I also contacted my old manager at the real estate office. She'd always liked me, always said I was wasting my talent on administrative work. When I explained I was getting divorced and needed more hours, better pay, she didn't hesitate. "We just opened a new position, property coordinator. More responsibility, more money. It's yours if you want it." I wanted it. I started apartment hunting. Nothing fancy, a small one-bedroom in the Richmond district close to Golden Gate Park. The landlord, an older woman named Mrs. Wong, asked why I was moving. "Divorce," I said simply. She nodded. "Good, I divorced my husband 30 years ago. Best decision I ever made. When you're ready, the apartment is yours." Ethan moved out 3 weeks after the penthouse viewing. He went to stay with his parents, which felt fitting. Diane called me twice, once to tell me I was making a mistake, once to tell me I'd never find anyone better. I didn't answer either time. The divorce was filed. The process was long, exhausting, full of paperwork and mediation, and Ethan's lawyer trying to argue that I deserved less because I'd deceived him about speaking French. Patricia had actually laughed. "That's the defense he's going with? Tell me, Mrs. Thornton. Did your husband ever ask if you spoke French?" "No." "Did he ever inquire about your mother's background, your childhood, your education?" "Never." Then there was no deception, only his assumption. She'd smiled. "We'll be fine." We were. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. I got half of everything. The condo was sold, the money split. I moved into my small apartment in the Richmond district, and for the first time in my adult life, every single item in my home was something I'd chosen. I put my mother's photograph on the mantle, the one Ethan had said was depressing, and made me keep in a drawer. I bought the cashmere scarf I'd returned and 3 more in different colors. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a grumpy orange tabby who'd been returned twice for being difficult. I named him Pierre. The French classes at the community center started in September. I'd seen the flyer at a coffee shop, intermediate French conversation, Tuesdays at 7, and signed up immediately. I walked in nervous, clutching my notebook, unsure if I belonged. The instructor, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a warm smile, welcomed me. Bienvenue, find a seat anywhere. I chose a chair near the window. A moment later, someone sat down beside me. First time? He asked. I looked up. He was maybe 40, dark hair starting to gray at the temples, brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Yes, you? Third session, I'm Marcus. He held out his hand. Claire? His handshake was warm, brief, respectful. Why French? He asked. My mother was French. She died when I was young, and I lost it. I'm trying to get it back. That's beautiful. His smile softened. I'm learning because I'm moving to Montreal next year. New job, new start. Fresh divorce? Me too. The divorce part, not Montreal. Then we're in good company. We became friends slowly. Coffee after class turned into weekend walks through Golden Gate Park, turned into dinners where we spoke only in French, laughing at our mistakes. Marcus was kind in a way I'd forgotten men could be. He asked about my day and actually listened. He split checks without comment. He never once told me what to order. When he kissed me for the first time, 6 months after we'd met, it was gentle, tentative, asking permission even though no words were spoken. Is this okay? He whispered. Yes, I whispered back. It was more than okay. It was everything. 2 years after the divorce, I ran into Ethan at a grocery store in the marina. He looked older, tired. The confidence had leaked out of him somehow, leaving something diminished behind. Claire, he said my name like an accusation. Ethan, you look good. Thank you. I heard you're seeing someone, some guy. Marcus? Yes. His jaw tightened. You moved on fast. It's been 2 years. Yeah, well. He shifted his grocery basket from one hand to the other. I'm doing fine too. Great, actually. I'm seeing someone. He was lying. I could tell. I'm glad, I said sincerely. My parents ask about you sometimes. They think I should have fought harder to keep you. They never liked me, Ethan. No, he admitted quietly. They didn't. But they think I made a mistake. That I didn't appreciate what I had. I looked at him, this man I'd once believed I loved, and felt nothing but distant pity. You didn't, I said gently. But that's in the past now. I hope you find someone who makes you happy. Someone you actually see. I walked away before he could respond. Marcus proposed on a Tuesday night in my small apartment. No fancy restaurant, no big production. Just the two of us and Pierre, who was purring on the couch. I know it's soon, Marcus said, holding a simple silver ring. And I know you just got out of something hard. But Claire, I love you. I love how you take your coffee with too much cream. I love how you talk to your cat in French. I love how strong you are, even when you don't think you are. If you need more time, I'll wait. If you never want to get married again, I'll understand. But I had to ask. I looked at this man, this kind, patient, genuine man, and felt something I'd never felt with Ethan. Safe, seen, loved. Yes, I said. Pierre yowled his approval. We were married 6 months later in Mrs. Wong's garden with 20 people who actually loved us. Patricia came. My old boss came. Marcus's sister flew in from Montreal. Mrs. Wong officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. There were no ice sculptures, no pearls, no performance. Just love, real love. Afterward, at the small reception in a neighborhood restaurant, I stood up to speak. I want to thank everyone for being here, I said, my voice steady. A few years ago, I was in a marriage where I felt invisible, where I made myself small because I thought that's what love required. I learned something important. Love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real love asks you to grow. I looked at Marcus, who was watching me with those warm eyes. I'm grateful for second chances, for kind people, for realizing it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. Mrs. Wong wiped her eyes. Patricia raised her glass. And I realized, standing there in a room full of people who valued me, that I had finally found my way home. Not to a place, to myself. 3 years later, I'm sitting at my kitchen table in our small house in the Sunset District, the neighborhood I'd lived in when I first met Ethan, but now in a home I actually own. That Marcus and I bought together, both our names on the deed. Pierre is asleep in a patch of sunlight. Marcus is making coffee, humming something in French. I'm working on a presentation for my job. I'm a senior property manager now, leading a team of 5. My phone buzzes. An email from Michel Beaumont, the man who'd shown us the penthouse years ago. He'd found my contact information through my work profile. Madame, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to reach out to say I often think of the day you visited my property. Your courage that day inspired me. My sister, who I mentioned briefly, wanted me to tell you that your story gave her strength too when I shared it with her. She hopes you found your happiness. As do I. Michel, I write back immediately. Monsieur Beaumont, thank you for your kindness that day and for this message. Please tell your sister I found more than happiness. I found myself. And that's worth more than any penthouse. With gratitude, Claire Brooks, I hit send and close my laptop. Marcus sets a cup of coffee in front of me, cream, just the way I like it, because he's noticed, because he pays attention, because he cares. What are you smiling about? He asks. Just remembering something. Good memory? The beginning of one. He kisses the top of my head and settles into the chair across from me with the newspaper. We sit in comfortable silence, the morning sun warm on our faces, and I think about that woman in the penthouse 3 years ago. The one who finally stopped making herself small. The one who chose herself. The one who learned that sometimes the most important language you can speak is the language of your own worth. And I think, you did it. You're free.